5 concepts that will disappear in the age of AI. Number 1, socialism. I think that this old school idea of socialism conceived as in the 20th century is doomed to die. Because there are two reasons why. Mainly because socialism, the way that it works is usually there's kind of like a ruling class, by government, by, aristocracy or whatever ruling class is here, and then the ruling class is the one that kind of like imposes down the rules and how things are going to be run, and kind of like the values and the perspectives that people grow into. And with AI, that will be impossible to manage, because AI, as I mentioned in another video, is kind of its own colony. Like, it's alive. AI feeds AI. AI grows and steams off AI, meaning there's no one person behind the keyboard programming AI. AI learns from its own AI. So it's kind of like a live colony that just grows. So it will be very, very difficult, although obviously it could be skewed and biased towards more of a liberal type of politics and worldview. It is impossible to impose anything into AI. That's number one. And number two, usually socialism has been tied to economics. And I'm under the impression perhaps these will not develop in the next 10 years, but by year number 10, this will be very much, it will be very much accepted and already somehow in the collective unconscious, or conscious actually, which is the idea of universal income. And I know today when you say universal income, people kind of like get spooky about it, at least in my circle. But that is something that I'm getting in terms with, because I don't see another solution to this. And I don't think it's fair that, this technology, the way that is being implemented, like the way that is growing, is fair for the real human to be kind of like on the sidewalk with very small opportunities. So that being said, the age of AI will bring some kind of like extra empathy for our neighbors and for our community and for our society. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that it's not going to be as savage. and it has been so far where, you got laid off, just get another job. No, it's not going to be like that. There's going to be some kind of like real empathy feeling, because we're all going to go through very, very similar situations. We're currently, all of us, going through very similar situations. And I think that, kind of like mixes, you can see that on social media, between just reading comments and just paying a little bit of attention of like how people in general are feeling. And so in that sense, I am sure that most of us are eventually, if not just yet, eventually start to open to that idea of like, well, hell yeah, maybe we do need universal income, and we do need, accessible free. I know it's not free healthcare, and we do need certain things because otherwise it's impossible. Um, and I have been accused of a socialist myself very recently by a friend. Well, right, not we weren't arguing or anything like that, and I get it. And probably my posture today is very, very different to what it was in 2016, 2018. But again, I think as me, there will be a lot of people kind of like slowly sliding into this more of a um, community-driven, accessible type of services. But that doesn't really mean that you're a socialist. So that idea is just that concept is very spooky because people are still kind of somehow attached to, like the Cuban socialism or the Russian socialism or the Latin American socialism. It really will have a reinvention, I believe. The second word or concept that I think is going to disappear in the next 10 years is capitalism. Just, like kind of like the antagonist there, because capitalism perhaps has been what brought us here, and capitalism perhaps has been a good companion for the Western economies as soon as they were into these kind of like dominant empire, petrodollar, top of the wave. Things are changing. They are changing very fast. We can see it every day in the news. This war in Iran has been a shock to a lot of people, to the world, I will say. And we're not sure where things are going to land after this transition that we're going through. But again, as we reimagine what socialism is, I think we will start to reimagine what capitalism is. And in a way, it has kind of like degenerate to something that is very amorphous, where we have these very, very, very extremely wealthy people and a layer in America, and not only in America but in Europe, but like in the West in general and the global South, that are not, I'm not going to say are struggling, but are kind of diminishing their acquisition power. And by acquisition power, I don't mean making more purchases in Amazon. I'm actually talking about, the opportunities to afford a house, to save for a down payment, to, buy a new card or update a car or update even hardware like a new computer or a new phone. So that kind of huge gap, it will require some type of reset. So capitalism, as we understand it today, I think as we enter the age of AI, will also need a rehaul, and it will probably, the word itself and what we understand by it, it will probably dissipate. The third world is salary, and salary being understood as work compensation for a job that you do and that they pay you, kind of like weekly or bi-weekly. And that will tend to disappear just because the white collar jobs are in a trend to disappear. And I think, again, we'll need a lot of that extra empathy for our neighbors, our community, to kind of like help them navigate this new way of earning a living, because not everyone has that entrepreneurial kind of like vibe. There's people that much rather have, they have other social skills, and then maybe they're not just a go-getter, and then they rather kind of like they give their best when they are in those situations are more controlled. So that idea of a salary and how we conceive like this kind of like path is also going to be diluted, and I'm not too sure what's going to come out of that, but I can see some kind of universal income kind of supplementing maybe like a 40% of what used to be a salary. The fourth thing that I see disappearing is universities. Universities understood as that collective where you could find as those units where you could find that collective of knowledge. I think knowledge is going to be dispersed all around through AI, through the internet, but then also through the actual exercise of what you're learning. And in that sense, there will be, in juxtaposition to that, my son is coming. The fifth word is trust. Fifth word is trust. Truth and reality. And I have to come back to this because I won't be able to talk with him here. Anyways, I'll give you the fifth. I'll give you the fifth word in another time.